Hello, this is Group 7 for Reflection Video 3, and the topics we will be discussing is how modern architecture is hindering human emotion, modern architecture in America should resemble international cities, the problem with modern architecture and the decrease of public spaces, and how the beauty of a city is vital to its healthy lifestyle.
Hi, my name is Marie Zinman. I'm from Group 7, and I am going to be discussing the TED Talk, Bringing Back Emotion and Intimacy in Architecture by Adrian Bika, into the articles that we read about in class and discussed. So the TED Talk, given by Adrian Bika, who is an architect and a professor, discusses the removal of emotion and human connection with the spaces that surround us and the spaces that we occupy. And Bika attributes this to three main factors that have kind of happened throughout history and today. First, architecture's transformation into a technological science that is focused on optimization, low cost, efficiency. Bika traces this to the end of the 16th century with the introduction of the Cartesian grid. And instead of architecture being, more of an art, it became, once again, focused on optimization. And I believe that this ties in pretty closely with Jane Jacobs's point about urban planners and architects oversimplifying the process of city planning. They're not taking into account the organized complexity that goes into a space and the several multifaceted aspects of the space that humans occupy. Secondly, Bika talks about the privatization of urban culture, specifically how urban culture has become rooted in individualism. He says that citizens used to feel connected on city streets. It used to be a place of congregation, a place to feel connected with citizens around us. But now we view city streets simply as a place of transition, and the people on them and the traffic that's on them as obstacles to get around. And I believe this is pretty connected with Gell, as he talks about the human element of the city being most important. He is also a big advocate of pedestrian-focused cities, and so I believe that he would be in line with what Bika says about cities' streets specifically being more focused on engaging social complexities among citizens rather than just being a place of transportation. Finally, Bika talks about architecture becoming a mode for branding and sort of capitalism. Architecture entered the service industry and became a marketing strategy more than an art. We can see this in fast food chains and other just commercialized uniform places that really bring a lack of human connection with them, and it really makes people feel disconnected with the spaces they occupy when everything is the same. Thank you.
My name is Braylon Swoboda, and I'll be discussing bringing modern architecture back to America. In Common Edge, they explain most people are not fond of modern architecture because of its lack of character, similar to the topic of hostile architecture that we discussed in class. These issues, along with traffic and pollution, are the main issues with modern architecture. Looking into modern cities internationally, in Berlin they started the 1987 International Building Exhibition with plans to restore traditional city planning principles while including new modern elements and preserving core elements. Moving forward, Gale and Jacob spoke on in their articles shortening block density and including diversification in streets and buildings, while making cities almost resemble Copenhagen's structure to satisfy the goals of walkability, compactness, and social networks. It would be best for modern architecture in America to kind of resemble these international cities such as Copenhagen.
The biggest issue with recent city development is the increase in buildings and cars taking up the public areas in cities. According to the book Cities for People by Gell J., walking is the beginning, the starting point. Man was created to walk, and all of life's events, large and small, develop when we walk among other people. Cities have focused more on economic development for buildings and getting place to place the fastest. However, cities need to have an increase in public spaces. Places that were once used for leisure time and a chance to get away from the hustle and bustle have been constructed into empty spaces used for driving or parked vehicles. Early cities were strategically built for short walking distances and military control, and almost every building was working together to make the city. However, now people rely on vehicles to get place to place, and buildings are built individually instead of working together. An outside source I connected to this reading was How Public Spaces Make Cities Work by TED Talk on YouTube. The speaker, Amanda Burden, talked about where people go or where people meet is what makes the city work. Something that really stuck out to me was that commercial investment and common good for the city often don't align when it comes to open spaces. This is because a developer just sees people as customers, but public spaces are what keeps people in cities and want to stay. Therefore, it's important that cities have public spaces and aren't strictly for economic use.
Hi, I'm David DeArmond. To start my presentation, I really wanted to go over the description of maritime freight by Asher in her book, The Works. So, she doesn't get much into the explicit interconnected systems. What she does is really describe the inner workings and creation of waterways, ports, harbors, etc. The part of it that I found most interesting is the description of how they work and how they are created using dredgers to dig up silt, such as in New York City Harbor, to make it so that deeper and deeper ships can actually make it through without, running themselves on the ground. So simply what just seems something only isolated to waterways is actually a greater description, because think about all the resources and all the capital that actually has to go into the creation of these waterways. And looking at this relatively surface level interconnectedness, we can then go on to my other source, The Crucial Role and Importance of Waterway Transportation, which lists out a few individual and explicit true advantages of it. And the two that really stood out to me the most are them describing the both industrial and connected aspects of waterways. Because, of course, with ports, we're going to have global trade. That is a major interconnected system, but not one I really want to focus on. More so the job creation and all the capital that is being moved constantly backward and forth just to make these even possible. On the ports themselves, not even directly on the water, there's all sorts of machines, there's roads, there's electricity networks, there's all of these different connected systems working just to make a single port function. Even in the waterways themselves, it's not just tankers. There's so many regulations, there's so many systems put in places. You have to call in on certain radio channels so that people know where you're going, where you're coming from, and who you actually are. There's tugboats to lead these cargo freighters around. There's so much intricacy. There's so much interconnectedness among what seems like should be simple, just putting a boat into water and stopping it. But there's a lot of work that actually goes into making this possible.